Hello, and welcome to the second lesson in the sixth fetter, where we're going to talk about subject object. And the antidote to subject object is observation or observing. And this lesson is we're going to talk about the sixth fetter. We're going to talk about the subject that is here, that is perceiving that there's object, something out there. And in order to have six feather falling, you would need your observation skills. And it's about you pulling yourself out, about you no longer identifying with an I. And if it's triggering in any way, what's the lesson about boundaries? What's the thing, the lessons in 4 and 5 about all the things you want, all the things you don't want? And if there's trauma or issues about, usually, I wanted to say, a lot of times when I say that this is the lesson where you realize that there's no difference between any other object in the room and your body. When I say that, a lot of people can get really nervous about that. And if that is the issue, then it's in the second fetter that there are some nuggets for you to pick up, where I would recommend you to go back. But if you're all like, ooh, butterfly, you want to do this, when I say that, hopefully at the end of this fetter, you're going to see that there is no difference between the body and any other object. And there's no I anywhere to observe. It's what I said in the last lesson, that anything out there doesn't need a you to be experienced. And that is what we are looking into. So the sixth fetter about subject object, it's about dissolving that. We have this idea that there is an I here, and then there's all the things out there that I can look at. We're going to have a lot of exercises as well. We're going to mention some of them today. But there's going to be a lot of exercises. It's very much a fetter where it's mainly exercises, because
it's very practical fetter.
Very, very practical. Yeah. You need to practice to see it over and over and over again.
Which makes it a much more fun one to deal with than like 4 or 5, because with practicing with 4 and 5, it's like just sitting in the ick.
Yeah.
And with this one, it's just really about playing with perspective and observing the way that you're actually seeing the world.
Yeah.
And hearing the world. And we talk about a lot about the visual sense, but we can also talk as we go through more about this also works in the auditory sense and even the felt sense. Yeah, exactly. So
our friend Lake enjoys the sixth fetter the most.
Yeah.
Because it is the one that is really, really fun to play with. It's going to be that you want to be outside in a forest, sit and look at trees, and then just playing with that, with the visual sense, with what is. Because the thing is, if you look out the window right now, no matter what you look at, your eyes is going to fall on something. In our case, it's lots of trees that we see. And immediately when the eye falls on all those trees, your mind goes, those are trees. And there's a recognition of those trees. And the thing is that we don't really see them. We recognize them. It's like when you're reading a book, you don't read the letters, you recognize the words, and you just that's why you can have sentences that are teasing you, that is twisted about.
The words are in different positions, or even the fact with the word itself. They've had those ones where it's as long as the first and last letters of a word are in the right place, the internal letters of the word can be scrambled completely, and you could still read it entirely coherently, because we only use the sort of, ironically, the outer boundaries of the word to delineate it, so that we can then recognize what it is, and the internal parts can be in any configuration and we'll still understand it.
Yeah. And it's the same that happens when you look out the window, that you just recognize a lot of things.
Like right now, right, just as an example. So I'm looking out the window, and the window is segmented into squares. And what I'm seeing out the one square it takes an interpretation to say that those are trees, because really what's there is just a dark green and blackish mass of some lines and some blur, and that's the only thing you can see in that square. It could just as well be an abstract painting. It could be, completely two-dimensional, but there's this extra layer of thought which immediately sees it, cognizes it, and says, I've seen those before. Those are trees. That's what that's part of. And it's making sense out of something which is otherwise completely unintelligible.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is what we are looking at and dissolving.
That, and also the perspective that I'm sitting here on a couch looking out at a window, and then even beyond the window at the trees that are some distance from the window.
So it's everything from here. Mm-hmm. How do you know that there is, a viewer here? Yeah. First of all, there is no eye. There's nobody to experience what is happening. It's a meat suit, and that's it. On top of that, whatever you see out there is not seen out there. It's seen in the brain. Yeah. Which means that whatever I experienced, that when after my accident, I had an accident where I sustained a brain injury, and a lot of the visual field was distorted. I would hallucinate, that meaning that I would see things, for example, on the floor, that my mind would put a picture in, that's a cat. And when I went to it, I knew it couldn't be a cat because I didn't have a cat, so it could not be a cat. But I saw a cat. And when I went to it, it would be a shoe. I touched it, it would be a shoe. I had an experience where I heard something falling in the kitchen, and I went into the kitchen and everything was fine. There was nothing to see. But when I put my hand on the counter, then with the sense felt, with the felt sense, I could feel that there was soil. And the moment I felt all that soil, suddenly I could see that one of my shelves had fallen down, and there was plants and pots and soil everywhere in the kitchen. But the moment I entered the kitchen, I couldn't see that. And that is extreme because it's a brain injury. Yeah. But it is basically what is happening in our brain all the time. That you do not see what is there. You recognize, and the brain is putting up a picture that it thinks is what it is. Because if you look out of your window now, how do you actually know that is a window? How do you know that is a window? It might be a painting. It might be a flat painting. The dimensions that the brain puts on it is something that the brain is adding. The dimensions are not there. When in the visual sense, everything is flat. It's, flat and,
close. I mean, it's as close as you can get. That's one of the things that we point to all the time, is that it's not that there is, in our visual field, a world out there at a distance. When the sort of perceptual shift happens and you have that sort of collapsing that people talk about, is because you recognize that even though you were initially taking the other wall in the room to be 10, 20 feet away, all of a sudden it's recognized that no, it's actually a flat image, which is as close as the seeming viewer of the image. That there is absolutely no space between a seer and the scene, between the perceiver and the wall that seems to be being perceived.
No, because it's perceived by the eyes and processed by the brain that is like right next to the eye. So there is no distance.
No distance. But even in the perception of it, it's like it takes that extra. There's that extra feeling that a lot of people talk about, where you have this. It's an assumption of something behind, and it's an assumption of this little me that's somewhere back here or just back behind the head, and it's viewing the world almost as if it's sitting in a movie theater looking at a movie screen. And of course, when you look back and try to find that one, it's very difficult to find because it's not there. And you might even notice that there's like a ghost image of black behind you. Like we have these different sort of half sensations of like, I know there's kind of nothing behind me, but I feel like there's like black back there. And then everything is somehow pushed out in front of me.
True.
And so it's coming to look back at that enough in a way that it collapses the false perspective of something situated here with just black empty space behind it, and then kind of the distance that you could move through to get to the object that you're looking at. And it's the recognition that all of that is happening in exactly the same space with no viewer sitting in a movie theater chair looking at a screen and no black behind it. There is literally only what is seen being experienced.
And that is why we keep falling back to the Bahia Sutta.
Yeah.
The fetters are from the Bahia Sutta, that in the scene, simply the scene.
Yeah.
That there's no add-on to that. There's no blackness behind the screen. There's no screen in front of you. There's no depth. There's no aha. It's a tree. There's none of that. All of that is not there. And that is what we are calling for you to really investigate.
Yeah.
And that's why the antidote is observing.
Yeah.
Whenever you feel, for example, like what Todd was just talking about it, when you have that feeling that you sit kind of here in the middle, and you're up against a black wall and it's just black, and then you're sitting and having the full view as in a theater, seeing everything, and everything out there, just expands and expands and expands and is 3D. Really observe. Are you sure about that? Are you sure that is how it is? Really question your experience.
And it's really questioning it all the way around. I remember when I was first starting to work with this stuff, and I would walk around the block and I would notice things from a distance that seemed to be one thing. And then as I got closer, I could watch as like you were saying, with your seeing what you thought was a cat and it turned into a shoe. It was a similar sort of thing where I would see this furry blob on the ground, and it would kind of do this twisting, morphing, and it would become like a possum. And then it's like, okay, and it would morph again as I got closer, and then it became like a squirrel with a big tail coming up. Or I remember one time there was this black mass, and it went from being, there was a person bent over, and then it kind of did the little shifting thing, and it became, I think, a garbage bin, and then it shifted again, and I think it ended up being like black garbage bags or something, but it went through at least 3 or 4 iterations by the time I got to it, where it just completely, but into completely believable things. And that's what our brain is constantly doing.
It's also why but I saw it with my own eyes. Yeah. It doesn't count as anything. It's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you thought it with your own mind.
Yeah.
And then I also used to do, and I still think this is a great exercise, is to what every child does when they're growing up, just lie and look at the clouds. And you can see how definitively that cloud will become something. Like, that is a dragon. And then the brain does this reconfiguration, and the cloud has barely moved, but it'll reconfigure it to become a face. And then it'll reconfigure it again to become a shoe. Whatever the thing is, it will keep finding new permutations based on what it is anticipating it to be. And it looks very, very convincing.
Yeah.
But that is our experience all the time.
Yeah.
That's why this stuff can be kind of destabilizing for people, because we are recognizing that the way that we view the world is not accurate, and it's not infallible.
No, everything and we're going to have a lot of exercises about that. Everything you think is in a certain way, it's not like that at all. And I mean, science even point to that whatever we think is out there, it's not. It's just atoms and also we remember that picture of that Angela posted about the dog, or was it a bird, that looks like one of those boring brown birds. I was raised being told that the male bird is always the colorful one, and the female bird is like brown or gray, because she's hiding on the eggs. Turns out she's not. She's super, super colorful. We can't just see it with our eyes. With the spectrum we receive colors with, we can't see it. But for the male bird, she's delicious.
Delicious.
But it's like that, and we have that tendency and that arrogance, as humans, to believe that. But I've seen it, I know it because I saw it.
Yeah. No.
It doesn't count at all. Anything you see. The same with hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the we put so much into what is being heard, whether it's if you just hear a sound and you don't see the supposed source of the sound, it's left up to assumption as to what that sound is, and then the brain is using a whole bunch of different metrics to try to determine how far away the object is, which direction it's in compared to your relative position, relative to your position.
Yeah, like a truck that you hear out there and that is getting closer.
Yeah.
Without you even thinking about it, you have that idea.
You see the image of the truck.
First of all, you see the image in your mind, yeah.
And then you see it, it's coming closer. And we know because of the way that the pitch gets higher or lower as the object is appearing or moving further away, and it's getting louder or quieter. And so we assume, because we've learned in the past, that things are loud when they're close up, and the same object seems to be quieter when it's at a distance. And so we take that to assume what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Actually, it could be a very small pitch-changing truck going through the middle of your living room, and you have no idea. I mean, it could also be a synthesizer. It could be a sound effect. It could be... We have no idea what the actual source of the sound is. It's an assumption. And so the first thing that we notice is that we are assuming what the object is that's creating it. Recognize that we're not actually hearing the sound as it really is. Can
we back up a bit?
Sure.
Can we back up a bit? Because assuming what the object is, that is where you get a mental picture.
Yeah.
We had an experience yesterday where you heard a sound, and your mind tried to place what the sound was, and you couldn't place it. So you asked, "What was that falling?" And I was like, "Oh, that was the soap dispenser." And the moment I said it, you were like, "Ah, yeah, right." Because then you had a mental picture of the soap dispenser. Hate IKEA. We don't. We love IKEA. We love IKEA. But the soap dispenser had fallen down, and then okay. Because there's that, lots of pictures being scrolled through in the brain that could fit, the sound.
Yeah, and you can feel when it's like, does that sound match up with the thing that I think just fell?
Yeah.
And we have such a library of crashes and bangs and, the textures and the heaviness and the solidity of different objects and what they sound like when they fall or break or how they...
Yeah.
I mean, if you heard and then somebody said, "Oh, I just dropped a vase," it wouldn't line up. You'd be like, that doesn't make any sense.
But what the mind, and that is why I wanted to slow down a bit, because notice when you hear a sound, what the mind does when it creates a picture. Yeah. It goes through a library of pictures until you have like a huge truck that is out there, not a very high-pitched little truck going through your living room. You go through all the pictures until you have that. What that could be. No, it cannot be a cotton ball. No, it cannot be a cat meowing. No, it cannot be a dog barking. It cannot be a soap dispenser. Yeah. We go through all of those pictures in the mind, and that is really, really interesting to observe. And again, when that happens, and when you start to play with the sound, notice also that there is no I in that anywhere. Yeah. It's just what the meat suit does. The ears is picking up on something. The brain is trying to create a lot of pictures, and that's it. You do not need to be there for all that to happen. You can just lean back, with the popcorn and enjoy the show. The meat suit is doing its thing.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And
did you forget what we were talking about?
No, I didn't.
Good, because I did.
Okay. No, so once you have that assumption of what the thing is that you're hearing, you've already made it so that you're no longer actually hearing the sound itself. So that's why a lot of times when we do not only sixth fetter exercises, but basic mindfulness exercises even, it's good to let that image be on aside and listen to the actual raw sensation of the sound. Just what is the raw experience of sound? And it's a completely different experience to hear a bird chirping without having any mental image that it's a bird chirping.
Yes.
It's just a fluctuation of pitches and it's indescribable because
that's another exercise that we're also gonna do. It's because it's that there's a very, very subtle grasping for something, fourth feather wanting something to be a bird. Yeah. And there's a very clear fifth feather avoidance for it to be, something else. So there's that, push-pull that we talked about in the fourth and the fifth feather. There's that push-pull happening where you want it to be a bird and you don't want it to be a dog, and it's going like that. And the moment that you completely release that and completely detach 4 and 5 from it, and it's just a sound, there's nobody perceiving the sound, it's just a sound happening, then the sound dissolves. And that is where you start to really feel into how 4, 5, 6, 7 are combined. Yeah. Because the seventh feather is about something out of nothing. And that is where you hear a sound, your mind say, it's a bird. And then you want it to be a bird. And if somebody says, no, that's a dog, you feel the fifth feather kicking in. That's not a dog. That is a bluebird. It's a
blue jay.
Blue jay. It is a bird. It's a bird.
It's a bird.
To all ornithologists out there, truly apologize. It's a bird.
It's a bird.
Yeah, so to all the ornithologists out there, congratulations, you just felt fifth feather. No, but that's a really, really good exercise to really feel into that 4, 5, 6, 7 thing that is happening, and see if you can completely release all the grasping for it to be something, for you to know it, for the creating something out of nothing, and just completely dissolve everything and just be where in a space where a sound is happening.
Yeah.
You had the experience. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So had the experience recently of been working with some boundary related old trauma stuff, and was sitting in a car just kind of feeling into the discomfort of the moment. And I was looking out the front window, the windshield. There was a giant tree, and the tree, it's almost spring, but it's still winter. And so there were just some leaves on it, but it was a very big, lovely tree. And and so as I was looking at the tree, feeling that kind of discomfort of I was basically playing through with like the old stories of like, if that kind of playing into the feeling of like not wanting this or that sort of thing, to kind of get back into these old emotions that were there. And at that, it was very clearly a tree. And then as soon as there was the space around it, and I just was letting all of that go again and just being with what was here, the tree disappeared. The boundary, the shape of it, the feeling of it as being tree disappeared. Solid in any way disappeared. And there was just the leaves that were there, these dry leaves that were hanging, were just these little fluttering individual things that were all, even the perspective of distance between them, and then, this or whatever, just collapsed again. And it was so clear in that moment that having any sort of resistance to the moment, having any sort of feeling of not wanting something, creates and reinforces this idea of boundaries.
Absolutely.
In a way that it creates this and that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as soon as that goes away, it's just everything collapses again.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's also why it's so important to really work with 4 and 5 and be completely fine with everyone in your life being as they are. You have no issue with it whatsoever, because you cannot have a tree disappear and dissolve if you have any skin in the game about something out there needs to be in a certain way for you to be in a certain way. You need to be absolutely free, set everyone free, everything free to be as it is. There's no expectations anymore about having internet. We haven't got internet at the moment. Having internet, or a tree be a tree, or Janice being kind, or any of that. There's no expectation about that anymore, because you're setting everything free to be as it is, which means that things are just flowing. It's just experiences that are coming into existence and dissolving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was thinking about something. What was that?
Yeah, I also got to your. I was thinking, going back to the sound thing, where we were saying that there's, we hear a sound, we have the image of the sound, we have the idea of what it's coming from, we have this, as you said, the attachment to what we think it is, and the resistance to considering that it's something else, and all of that. But you're also in that moment noticing that it seems like it is at a certain distance.
Yes.
And it seems like it's at a certain direction from where you are. And so the more we pay attention to that, the closer that sound actually starts to be. Yeah. And the recognition that, in fact, it is not a truck that is a mile off in the distance. It is a sound which is happening literally right here, right now. And scientifically, we can say it's because nothing makes a sound. Nothing in the world creates a sound on its own. It causes a vibration in the air molecules, and you get the sound wave that goes through the air, and then it doesn't make a sound until it contacts an eardrum, which is then able to translate that sound into electrical impulses, which then get
transported to the brain.
Yeah, transported to the brain, and then interpreted by the brain. And then that creates the sound that is heard. Without that, a truck makes absolutely no sound whatsoever. And so we need to have that all of that functioning biology in order to have that sound get created. So realistically, scientifically, we know that sound is not happening out there. The sound is happening right here in the brain. And it's great to have that sort of conceptual understanding of why all this stuff works the way it does. And I think it's right. It's great when we're talking about these things to be mentioning that, all of it is happening right here. But ultimately, where you get the experiential shift or the real oomph out of it is to do the experiments to recognize that in your actual experience, you also can't find that supposed depth. You can't find that supposed distance between you and this imaginary truck. There is just sound that is happening as close as can possibly be. And then if you're looking for where is that hearer who is supposedly hearing the sound coming from a distance, even that hearer goes away. And then there is nothing left, again, coming back to the Bahia Sutra, that there's nothing there but sound. And it's the same with every sense field.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say that to all autists out there, that the way that we often experience sound is that all sounds are equal. Where neurotypical brains are really good at when you're in a crowded room, you guys are really, really good at picking up at the person you're standing next to and hear what they are saying louder or more directly than all the other people at all the other tables, the music in the background, the smells, the lights, all of that. For us, all of the senses are picking up equally all of it at the same time, which means that we experience it more as it actually is, which makes it more difficult to be in the world, because there are so many stimuli all the time that we need to be able to take one thing at a time to concentrate. And I think it's also helpful for neurotypical people to know that there are brains out there that does not hear things in a sequence. I don't hear the truck louder than the birds or the dogs or the neighbor talking or any smells or anything, because that's the other thing that is is going to shift for you when you're working with the sixth fetter. It's about synesthesia. That where we tend to place a sound in the hearing field and a vision in the seeing field and a smell in the smelling field and taste and touch, in each individual fields, the more you're working with the sixth fetter, the more those are dissolving as well, which means that you can end up where you look at a tree and you taste it more than you actually see it. Or for example, Wednesday for me is yellow. The letter 8 looks yellow when I look at a page and there's lots of different numbers. The number 8 is yellow. So it's something about the shape or something, which is normal for autists to experience that. And that's also where it can be helpful to just be prepared that whatever you perceive as reality now, it's only what you perceive it to be reality. It's not your reality. And it actually takes us into the part that, you remember in the lower fives when we talked about that we wanted you to distinguish between the direct experience, what is actually happening in your body, in your direct experience, that is reality. Whatever you're thinking about, all the thoughts that are attached to what is happening, to a sensory experience that is happening, thought is attached to that is fantasy. What we're going to do now is say that none of it is reality. No. Even the sensory experiences you have, even the direct experience you have, even when we're asking you just to sit and close your eyes and feel something, what we would like for you to notice now is that what you used to perceive and what used to be a stable, making everything stable so you felt, okay, I'm stable, even that is not real. And if this really scares the shit out of you, then just pause the video and circle to the lower 5 feathers. There's no point in pushing this in any way. You need to be stable before you start to do this. Absolutely. Because a lot of the experiences you have in the higher fives, it is, it borderlines, insanity. But it really does. It really does. It really can. Because we have so much identification tied up with all the senses, all the sensory experiences that we have, that, I know this is a cup, I can feel this is a cup, and then you and I come along and go like, I'm sure about that. and then we just solve it for you, Yeah. So yeah.
It's true. I think it's good advice to not move on until it feels absolutely ready, or until it starts on its own. I mean, as we were saying, when there is no resistance to things being there, when there's no when 4 and 5 are really naturally kind of worked through, and you don't have a lot of that resistance to what's going on and needing something different, a lot of times these things will just start unfolding on their own. It's not something that you have to really force. It's just something that's like, you'll start to notice, oh, well, that's weird, I've never seen that before, or that, this perspective suddenly becomes two-dimensional, or things like that will happen. And it could just be a brief, glimpse for a few minutes or something.
It can be you hear a sound and it tastes amazing. Yeah. And you go like, what? That was a sound, I'm not supposed to taste that.
Or you notice that when you're driving in a car, that the cars coming this way are not actually getting closer to you. They're just going from being small cars to big cars, and then vice versa. And so
I just want to say that now we're at cars. Please be careful.
And I'm not saying to do this while you're driving. I'm saying that you might just recognize in your daily experience. I mean, say you're walking down the road and you just recognize that because
I'm getting to that exercise in a second. Yeah. But it's about be careful when you drive. I mean, it's a known fact, and when you ask around, a lot of people have experienced, bumping into cars and in their car, creating accidents because they were, they couldn't see boundaries anymore. So really be careful. Do not do any of these exercises when you're driving ever, even though you get. And if you have a point where you experience what Todd just talked about, that actually the cars are not coming closer, they're just getting bigger. Pull over. No, seriously, pull over and wait until everything normalizes again, because it comes and goes. Yeah. And when it normalizes, you can continue. Another exercise I can recommend you to do is when you're walking. You know, when you look at your feet and you're walking, you can see you put a foot down, put a foot down, put a foot down. But instead, see if you can notice how it's not you putting the foot down, it's the ground that is going up and meeting the feet. So it's the other way. It's not putting the foot down, it's the ground going up, meeting the feet. So it goes like that instead.
Similar thing is when you're walking, to recognize that you are not walking past, you know, the environment.
That's a cute little one you have
there. that you are basically standing still and everything is coming at you.
Yeah.
And so
that's a fun exercise. Yeah, you're basically on a treadmill.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
everything
the
is
world
moving.
Is just coming to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And there are things which aren't. Once you get used to it, it's very easy to flip back and forth.
Yeah.
And you can have that change of perspective. And
could we talk about that a bit? Talk about the dimensions?
Yeah.
An exercise I really enjoy doing when I'm in the forest, usually at forest, that I like to do that, because there's trees, lots of organic matter, and it's easier for me with organic matter than anything else with a cup, for example. And it's that sitting and looking at it. First, you look at it the way that the brain just perceives it. Excuse me. That you sit and you look at a tree, and you recognize that the brain right now see that as a tree. I recognize it as a tree. There's a front, there's a side, and there's a back. I can't see the back, but in my inner mind, I can see the back of the tree, even though I can't see it. I can see that branch is further this way and the other branch is further that way. And then you like we talked about, release the grasping for things to be the way that you think you see them, and you release the grasp of that being a branch and that being a tree. You just allow it to just be a visual thingy in front of you. It's no longer a tree with a label of a tree. It's just a visual thingy that is happening in front of you. And then you allow it to do whatever it does. So you don't have any hooks into that, keep staying three-dimensional. And that is when a lot of people experience that becoming two-dimensional. Mm-hmm. That you suddenly see as if you were a painter, where you see it flat. And you can see that it's not actually further this way, it goes up instead. It just looks like that. But when you really just sit and look at it, it's not further away, it just goes up.
Exactly.
And even further that, you can dissolve that two-dimension. Again, you just let go and just go with whatever visual thingy is happening in front of you. And what I experienced, and I know a lot of other autists experience, is that suddenly it's like organic matter becomes alive. That is, I can kind of like see water. It sounds odd, but like inside the tree, like energy going up, like a motorway in the stems or in the trunk of the tree, going up and down. You can see the breath in a leaf, especially it's very vibrant in spring. That there's like a breath happening in the leaf, and it's like everything is just so vibrant and alive. Where it's not so much aura. I think it's just like I don't know what it is, but it just quite funky.
Quite funky.
Yeah, and without being high in any way. It's just how it is. It's just how it is. But I also think that when we do these things, you have those psychedelic experiences, because when you're doing psychedelics, you obviously have them because areas of the brain are shut down and others are emphasized. But you can do that.
Some parts of the brain are talking to other parts of the brain they otherwise wouldn't have access to.
Yeah, exactly. Communication with. But you can do that without psychedelics. You can have those experiences. You can have those like, for example, the way that but again, it's because of autism, the way that I see a gray sky, it's never a gray sky. There's so many colors in a gray sky.
And it's actually been helpful for me being with you, because I would see a gray sky that I ordinarily would just take to be a pretty flat gray sky. And like, oh, look at those blues and look at that. And it would actually make me like look at it in a way where I was receptive to actually seeing maybe a pale hint of what you were seeing. Because my all of my senses are like, you know, if you're a 10, I'm a 1. Yeah, like they are so numb compared to yours. But I can see like, oh yeah, there is, you know, blue streaks in there, and there's a hint over here, and it's like stuff that just if my attention wasn't drawn to it, I wouldn't have been paying attention to that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So that's actually been really interesting.
Yeah. Was that everything you wanted to say? No.
I was also going to say, so something that we didn't talk about as much is in the felt sense.
Yes.
And it's really an interesting one, and I know I point to this a lot with inquiries and guided exercises, because we have such an assumption that there is a subject or a me that's either behind the eyes or, for some people, like in the chest. And if you had your eyes closed and you were looking down at your foot, for instance, the sensations in the foot.
We can do that now. If you close your eyes now, and you just sit and relax. Go on.
And you put your attention down into the sensation of your foot in contact with whatever it's in contact with right now. Feel if it's flat against the floor. Feel the pressure of the bottom of the foot against the floor. If you're sitting on your foot, feel the pressure against, you know, the leg or the cushion that you're on. And notice in this moment if it feels like you're looking down at the sensations in the foot, as if it was from your head or your chest, someplace where it feels like you are situated somehow above those physical sensations. And if it feels like there is almost an image of yourself or something which is above from them. And so we dissect it when we're doing a longer exploration of this. We notice whether there is a visual image of something in the mind of the head, the upper torso, and a visual image of a foot. If there's something else which seems to be creating this looking back and looking forward to a subject from to an object from a subject, and it's this same kind of distance that we create, or that we. I'm going to rephrase that. It's this same sensation which we ordinarily do not notice, which is creating that feeling of distance between a self in the body and the tree outside, between the self in here and the sound out there, the self in here and the smell out there. It's the same feeling of I am located somewhere in here, and then we're constantly pushing back at what's out there and checking in with what is in here that's at a distance to it. And it's this so one of the things that we do is
you can open your eyes again.
Sorry. One of these things we can do is to focus on an object that's out there, or focus on the feeling of the foot, and notice if there is a pull back to check in with something else, some sensation in the body, some idea of a subject that's in there, viewing or feeling or smelling or hearing something from a distance. And then turning your attention back on what it is that seems to be the thing which is sensing it all, picking it all up, witnessing it all, and seeing if there's actually any distance between it.
That. Yeah. I love that, looking back at it. Yeah.
I think it's so helpful. And recognizing that even within the felt sense, even if it feels like your foot is on the floor and it feels like it's being viewed from 3, 4, or 5 feet away from where it actually is, if you put enough attention on that felt sensation of the foot, same as the sound that's outside the window or the wall that's across the room from you, that feeling is also going to become very close. And we're going to be able to collapse that distance of perceptual sensation. Sensation perception? I'm not sure that sentence came out exactly the way. But
no, I understood it.
Thank you. Word salad. It collapses that perceptual sense.
Yeah. A thing I would like to point out when you are there, when you're sitting with your eyes closed and you look into the foot and you find out that first of all your eyes are looking down towards your feet, and then you have an image in your mind about your foot. That image that you have in your mind is what we call a little bubble. And in that little bubble is a lot of identification.
Yeah, there is.
It's pure thought, all of it, but there's so much identification that in that little bubble is your foot. You are here, and it's your foot, and it's your body, and you're looking at your foot while you are meditating, and you were meditating yesterday as well. And it has like this little bubble that has. Oh goodness, there was all the hats again.
Oh no!
It has this little bubble. And in that in that little bubble,
oh wait, boop, boop, boop. There.
And in that little bubble, there's so much identification happening, and that you can even go into and dissolve as well, because that also gives you that sensation that there is someone here sitting and looking at the bubble. See if you can jump into the bubble and look the other way back. Since we're in the mind anyway.
Absolutely.
We have me too. But it's also, we have a lot of exercises that we're going to do. But could I ask you just to check into what I started by saying, that in the sixth fetter, it's about the subject, object, and observing as the antidote. And I said that this is the fetter where you really realize that the meat suit, your body that is here, it is an object like any other objects. Could you just check in with that? Is that a thing that is okay with you after what we talked about now? Is that a thing that is interesting to look into? Can you go out in a forest and sit and just observe the trees without a you observing it? Do you really, really notice that you do not need to be there for a tree to be experienced? And if you really let go of that grasping of a tree and the aversion with all the other things that are around it, it can just completely dissolve, because there is no right way to perceive a tree.
Even 10 people all looking at the same tree are going to perceive it completely differently. And it really actually has a lot of, I think it ties in a lot of ways to the 10th fetter of it starts to undermine our belief in our own experience.
Yes.
And
and it's where the 4, 5, 6, 7, it's so woven into one another that you're getting where the foundational fetters was very much about really looking into all the trauma, all the things that need for you to really look at all this. But the higher fetters, it's very much about, like 10th fetter, not knowing, that you become more and more aware that you do not know anything. You do not know anything for sure. Whatever you see is just what you think you see. Whatever you hear is just what you think you hear. And you might start to smell sensations and taste sounds and
or watch a movie and smell the people in the movie, for instance.
Like you did yesterday.
Night. Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah.
Did you just put on patchouli?
Yeah. I didn't. I normally do, but I didn't.
Yeah, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that was a really, really perfect way of summarizing it.
Yeah.
And I think what was really helpful for me also was in the looking back for the thing that seems to be at this end of a distance from something else. There was this sort of, with the first fetter, no self, there's a sort of freedom of a feeling of openness or freedom or spaciousness. But I feel like there's still a nugget of contraction. It's like a nugget of locality. I think like you're really feel localized someplace, and if that's not there, all of a sudden that's where the body really does feel dissolved.
Yeah.
Boundaryless, to the point where it doesn't feel like there's a body there, and it doesn't feel like there's any distance between or separation between. And I think it's also really important to say with this one, because it's something that people often sort of misunderstand with the sixth fetter, is that they feel like if the sixth fetter is gone, that I am going to feel like I am everywhere and part of everything. Yeah. And so it's this idea of just taking the ego or taking the self feeling and just blowing it out to where
being
all
even
of a sudden,
bigger.
Even bigger. Now I am the trees and I am the sky and all of that. And so that's the expectation, is that if I'm looking at a wall, I should feel like the wall is looking back at me, because I am the wall. Like I should feel what it's like to be a wall. Some people have momentary experiences where it's like, I feel like I'm looking back at me, or it feels like I've had where I was doing, sixth fetter exercises, and it does look in some very strange way like everything is looking back at you, like the chair and stuff is somehow looking back at me.
It's also one of the exercises that we're going to do, where you notice what we talked about multiple times now, that you have the feeling that you're sitting and looking out, and then we instead put the awareness out there looking back at you, and then you are experiencing how all the objects around you is looking back at the object that is in the meat suit that is sitting here.
But I think it's really important to recognize that the idea isn't so that you will always feel like all of the objects
and a wall.
Exactly.
It is exactly what you say. It's just a big ego that is expanding even bigger. So now I'm everything.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're not looking for that.
We're not.
No. It's just that it's not that you are part of everything.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that if that is your experience, I just want to say for everybody that if that is your experience, that you do feel that you are everything and you are part of everything, and everything is just, looking back at the meat suit, and that is the experience. Look into the 4-5. Explore the 4-5, where you have a pulling and a pushing about something being in a certain way. If you are in any way provoked by us sitting and saying that's just ego, look into but seriously, look into that, because it's a really, really good indication that there's something that still needs for you to be something, to exist in some way, which, I mean, lots of love to you. Look into 4-5. The 4 and 5 fetter,
yeah. So
and the second fetter for sure.
So what we're talking about is not that you are part of everything or one with everything out there, or that you are the plant and the tree. It's that there is no you separate from anything else. It's the recognition that what is appearing is just what is appearing, and that there is not a you at odds with it, or taking it in and part of it, taking it in from a distance. It's just the collapsing of that feeling of separation.
Yeah.
Which is uncomfortable for a lot of people, because it is, as we do these things, we know every fetter that we talk about is another subtle form of identification.
Yeah.
And so this is one step closer to having, to really losing something that we hold on to as a fundamental part of our experience, or what we take ourselves to be.
And if there is any of that, part of the universe, part of the bigger, and part of all of that. That's part of the first and eighth. First and eighth fetter.
Yeah.
The identifying with an I, and the big I, and all that. That is called that is still part of that. And then look into the second fetter about the identification with feelings and emotions, because there's something there that needs your attention and your love. We have so many exercises.
Yeah. It's a fun one.
It is really a fun one.
It's so much play. It's such a playful one.
Yeah, it is.
You get to really explore your experience.
And just know that whatever you are looking at, tasting, smelling, touching, seeing, hearing, it's not real. It's not real. It's just what it seems to be. It's not what it actually is. And that makes it a really, really fun fetter to work with.
Yeah, it is.
Was that it?
I think that's
we can always make another sofa set. And if there's anything that you would like us to look into or to discuss or to debate, write in the comment section, and then we might make another sofa set about it. We are going to make a lot of exercises. I want to say that we have so many exercises for you in this fetter. And if you want to talk about it, then we have the Q&A every other Friday. We have the inquiry group every other Tuesday. So you're not alone in this. There's a huge community that would love to share all this with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that was it.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. You want a drink?
Yes.
Have a sip.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm starting now. You're fine.
You good? Okay.
Gorgeous. Thank you.
That's maybe.
No, not there. Thank you.
Okay, not okay.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. Hello, and welcome to the second lesson in the sixth fetter.